On the last episode, things weren't looking too good for the bug. But on this episode, we get it fired up. Hit it, Dad.
I'm an idiot. All right, Tom. Well, today's the day, mate. Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you yawning?
Yeah, I'm tired.
All right, there you go. All right, mate. Well, this is what we're going to do. Is I've put it off long enough, so it's time to pull the whole gearbox out and back, strip it all down, clean it off, get the gaskets done so it stops leaking oil. Does that sound all right?
Yep.
All right, mate. So what I think we need to do is we have to have a bit of a game plan, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to undo all the suspension. I've never done a gearbox out of a Volkswagen. It's brand new to me. I can't think it'd be all that hard. The engine came out with just 4 bolts. Let's get the suspension undone, get the coupling off the shift linkage, get the oil out, take as much off of it as we can and drop it down there. You're going to be camera boy today, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that because you don't look very good?
No.
Is that because you're half tired?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right, you can be camera boy. I'll get stuck into this. You can run the shots. Oh, okay, Tom. While we're waiting for the oil to drain out, I reckon what we do is we might get these shocks and get them painted up. They still look okay, they're still serviceable, so let's scrub them up, let's get them done. So what I'm doing, I'm now undoing, sorry about the noise in the background, I'm undoing the lower control arm, swing arm bolts. I think they're called swing arm bolts.
Yep. What you doing, Dad?
Mate, I've just found out that the connector for the shifter is underneath the back seat, so here's one I prepared earlier. So I reckon the shifter connector is below that. So we've got to undo that, get that out, and away we go. It's been a bit of a struggle, but I've got a feeling, Tom, we're ready to undo the front bolts and pull the whole thing back out. Look, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but the only way to find out is just to do it. And it's out, can you believe that? So for two guys who have never really had any Volkswagen experience, I mean, it's pretty simple, it's not that hard, it's all pretty self-explanatory, but that's pretty cool, hey Tom?
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah! Well, while this is all cleared out, I'm going to grab a bit of black paint and just tidy this area up so when we put it all back together, it's going to look Mickey Mouse. Alright, now the gearbox has been completely cleaned down as best we can. We're not going to go too crazy with the detailing on it. We just want it a little bit oil and grease free. Now it's time to start pulling off the tubes and replacing the seals so we can get it back in the bug. Okay, so as you can see, we've got our axle tube off the side of the gearbox. We've got a seal inside. We've also got these paper seals that we've got to replace. And we've got to replace also the rubber seals at the very end. This is a smelly job. I don't like this job, but you've got to go through the pleasure to get to, through the pain to get to the pleasure. But that's what it's all about. Do this side, then do the other side, and then hopefully chuck this thing back in. My weary bones. It's late in the day. We look like we're in the home stretch, and before I go inside, I want to chuck this back in and at least get it into position. So.
So what are we doing today, Dad?
Well, mate, as you can see from the old spark plug out there, not much has been going on. We're in lockdown at the moment. I've got the old Father Christmas beard going on. Have a look at that. Feel that. Feel that, Tom.
No.
Go on, feel it. Oh, soft. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to chuck the motor in the back of the bug. It's time to do it, so let's just hit the time lapse.
Yeah, it's finally in.
It is. It's back in. You pretty happy with that?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah, well, it's starting to look good. You know, we've had our detail bits and pieces and stuff like that. We've had our hot cross buns today, so we're ready to rock and roll. Let's keep working away on it, all right?
Do you reckon we can make it start today?
Yeah, I think we should be able to. We just have to make sure we work our way through. It is Easter Sunday. We've got to go and see the grandparents and do the Easter egg drop-off, so let's just focus on getting this one done today. Now, a little bit earlier on, I told you about wanting to use this Ford carburetor on the Volkswagen motor. But the problem is the bottom of these have got a very similar look to the Volkswagens, but you can sort of see one, which is the Ford one, is a lot bigger than this Volkswagen one. I'm not really happy with that Volkswagen one, so I'm going to use the Ford one. Before we get started, though, I'm going to pull this apart, give it a good clean out, make sure it's 100%, and then work out a way of fabricating a manifold extension converter to chuck onto the Volksy manifold. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Okay, so I got this Ford Carby apart, and I was actually pretty lucky when we got this one because we were told that it came out of a good running car, and everything sort of checks out that that's the case. It looks like it's pretty clean inside, doesn't really need too much before I can put it back together. But the best thing about this carburetor has to be the fact that it's got a brass float in it. Now, quick cleanup, just very mild cleanup, and then get it back on the car. Okay, carby's fixed, all sorted out. Now we have to work on the manifold, and here's one that I've cut a little bit earlier because normally it sits like that, and the Volkswagen Carby goes like that, sits on there, beautiful, happy days. But when it comes to the Ford Carby, as you can sort of see here, it doesn't quite line up. It's a lot smaller than what we have here. So we're going to have to make a manifold base for this to sit on, and then an adapter to go on this. Now I have got a piece of pipe, which is kind of cool, and that fits in nice and snug. We'll be able to weld that nice and clean and nice and easy. We've just got to position this so that it's still operational. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to cut it off flush, put a small riser, and then put the other carby base on there and build it up accordingly. So let's have some fun with that. Okay, so I never said I was a fabricator, I never said I was a welder, and that was pretty crap to say the least. That was also with an arc welder, a little hobby arc welder, and all I wanted to do was just put some tacks on this just to see if it was going to work. Looks like it is. Now I've got a MIG over there, so I'm going to break the MIG out on the very rare occasion I do some welding. Embarrass myself in front of you guys, but just remember, when you build cars, it's all about the journey and having fun and putting yourself out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, why the hell do you want to do it? So forgive me for my sins, for I know not what I weld. All right, back in the garage with the main man, Tom. How are you, Tom?
Good, how are you?
Mate, and we've got that right there, which is the intake manifold for the Volkswagen. And yesterday I was having a crack at doing that with the old arc welder, and it looks a bit like spoggy poo, doesn't it?
It does a little bit, yeah.
Yeah? Good, bad or ugly? What are your thoughts on that welding?
Bit ugly.
Bit ugly?
Yeah.
It certainly is, mate. It wasn't heaps good, but today we have got the MIG welder from old Unky Mark, or Unky Mong as we like to call him now. And so we're going to use that to weld that to put onto that. What do you reckon?
Sounds good.
So TJ, I'm going to teach you a little bit about PPE while you're watching me do some welding and stuff. We're going to have a welding mask, which is this little bad boy right here to protect us from obviously the sparks and stuff like that and the glare. These are your hard impact glasses, and these are our gloves that we're going to use, so because this is going to get a bit hot. What does PPE stand for, mate? Do you know? Personal
protection equipment.
Where did you learn that?
School.
Okay, well, I don't need to teach you anything then. Alright, so what I've done, Tom, is I've actually just cleaned up all the edge of that pipe just over here, just so it's going to be a little bit easier to weld, and the raw steel means that there's going to be a much better penetration with the wire that's coming out of the welder. So you just watch and see if you can pick up a few little tips and tricks.
So what are you doing now, Dad?
Well, mate, unfortunately we ran out of gas in the old Migaroony, so we've had to go back to the old stick welder, the arc welder. We're going to give this one a bit of a crack, and with any luck we should be able to get the job done. Hey mate, I actually think I'm pretty good at the old stick welding. I don't think I'm going to set the weld on fire and build any 9-second drag cars, but I actually don't think that's too bad.
Looks pretty good to me.
That actually doesn't look too bad at all. I'm gonna linish it up and get it cleaned up and stuff like that, but I know there's a lot of people at home watching going, oh, you know, from a welding point of view, but I think that's pretty good for a casual welder. Alright Tom, so what we're going to end up doing is we've got this piece of metal plate, and the carbie's going to sit obviously on the metal plate, which will cut out a piece of that plate in a minute. But right now what I've done is I've actually got the piece that we've welded up so far, the little piece of carbie extension here, and I've worked out how high roughly that plate needs to be sitting on top, and then I've given it a little bit of a cut down the sidewall, and I'm going to bend those out to meet the bottom of this, and then I'm going to build it up with steel and stuff like that inside, and that'll be our carbie perch. Okay, we have the carbie extension, we have the carbie plate, we've got to now mount the two together and bridge that gap by flaring this one out. Perfect, flared those out, that sits on top of that, no problems at all. We can now get this cleared up, get some tack welds onto it and start to build it up. And here it is. Now it's not the most prettiest thing, but it's basically like a carb spacer converter from the Volkswagen carb to the Ford carb. And it's done. Did I mention it's not very pretty? Okay, carb is now on its pedestal. So after all of that fabrication and after all the bits and pieces and building what we've now called the tunnel ram for the Volkswagen, it was too hard to hook up. The connections and linkages weren't working. So we broke out all the old Volkswagen carbies and we started playing with them. This was a Pick 2 carbie, that didn't work. This one we're going to put off. We're going to deal with that one a little bit later on. Follow me. But what we have ended up doing is putting on our oldest carbie, go to getting it on, getting it going, and have a guess what? It runs. It's going to need a bit of a tune, but I tell you what, it's running again. That's all that matters. Doesn't sound too bad.